Well, welcome everybody. Happy Friday, wherever you are at in this wonderful world. Hope you're having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, or night. Let me know where you're coming from. Give me an emoji mixed with, the emoji should represent what you're going to do this weekend. Are you going to sleep in? Are you going to work out? Are you going to go for a walk? Are you going to eat some food? Let me know. Let me know where you're coming from, because we already got a couple people in the chat already. Pretty cool. Pretty excited to be here with you. We got Abhigya Kumar. What's up? Right back to you. I'm very bad with names. Please forgive me. I just pray for your grace. Aditya Chandru says, hey guys, I got Alonzo Johnson, one of my design champions, in the chat this morning. Alonzo, how are you, my friend? We are going to be talking about dark user interfaces today. Really excited about that, because dark UI is something that a lot of people struggle with. They struggle to create these dark interfaces. And, you know, maybe you don't struggle creating the light version of the interface, but how do you actually create that dark version? And here's something you should know. Most people, most applications need to have some sort of dark interface. iOS actually makes it a mandatory now, because as a user, I'm allowed to go into my settings of my iPhone and I'm allowed to turn on dark mode. Everything should comply, right? So it is a huge necessity to know how to design these dark user interfaces. We got more people jumping in the chat. Hatanen says, what's up? We got Valentine from the Ukraine. Hope you're doing okay over there. Stay safe. Hey, from India, Rohit says hi. Welcome everybody from all around the world. I love, all the different emojis that are happening in there. We are also going to be playing a really just fun Friday game of Wordle. It's time to relax a little bit, everybody, and just have a good time. Hey, speaking of good times, if you're interested, Alonzo's in the chat this morning. He's one of my phenomenal design champions. If you're interested in having more live streams and time with me, consider becoming one of my design champions. We just had a design critique, probably one of the most fire design critiques we've had in the community. We had like over 22 or 23 people in the design critique, spent an entire hour walking through 3 people's work. And it was like above and beyond one of the best times you could just have, learning how to critique other people's work, to offer value to them, to give them feedback. If you happen to be one of those people on the hot seat, man, the amount of growth you get from having 20 plus people feed into you, pour into you, and give you that objective lens for like 20 or 25 minutes at a time is like priceless. It's something you can't get unless you go to like design school and pay, lots and lots of money. But thankfully, Design Champs is like about the price of a cup of coffee. So, a fancy latte or 2 a month, and you're in. So consider that. Hey, I'm really excited. This session today, all about dark user interfaces, actually is coming directly from my new 30-day UI designer program. I'm really excited, y'all. And last promo, I promise, but the 30-day UI designer program, it's a 30-day immersive journey to master user interface design. It's actually launching in a couple weeks. Oh my gosh, I'm almost finished with production, and editing is happening soon, and all that stuff is happening. So a couple more weeks if you want to sign up and become an early backer. The first 200 people are considered early backers. Check out my early backer list. I just showed some emails. I probably shouldn't have done that. We'll edit that out. But just know that I have 164 people signed up as early backers. I got a couple more spots, like 36 spots. Okay, so sign up as an early backer. You can get half off, lots of goodies, lots of stuff. If you're interested in what that looks like, you can head on over and check out 30dayui.com. Go to 30dayui.com. The link is down in the description, and you can sign up right here and commit your $7 to hold your seat as an early backer. It's gonna be amazing. All right, let's jump in. Let's start talking a little bit about dark user interfaces, shall we? Really excited. Let's talk about dark UI. And when we're talking about dark user interfaces, we're gonna cover the 4 pillars of dark UI design. We're also going to talk about one of the most important elements or concepts of dark UI design, and we're going to jump into Figma, start working together. So if you want to open up a Figma file, you totally can. Let's jump into these 4 pillars, okay? First, let's talk about these 4 pillars. The first one being background, the second one being text, the third one being UI elements, and the last one being imagery. Okay, so all of these, and when I say these are pillars, these are the things you actually have to changed. You actually have to consider and make edits to and make some design decisions if you're going to actually design a good dark interface. Let's start with background color. And then I promise after we hit these four, we are going to then dive into that one big, large kind of concept that's necessary. But let's start first with these four pillars of dark UI design. The first one being background. We're talking about the body color or the background color of your interface. It's very, very important that you pick not a pure black, but instead more of an off black. We're going to pick a dark color. You can actually do a really deep gray. You can also tinge it. We'll talk about this when we get into our Figma file. You can tinge it with a hint of your brand color. I say tinge it. That's a really weird word. You can just give a hint of that brand color on top of that deep gray or that off black. And we're going to build a neutral color scale today, and we're going to lay that little bit of that brand color on top. We want to, we'll go through that whole thing. But we want to use shades and states of white and black, of these off whites and this, or excuse me, off black and this white, to denote dimensionality. And we'll talk about depth here in a second, but the lighter, the higher. Just remember that I said that. The lighter that the color is, then the higher it is. Let's talk about text. That was the second thing that we mentioned here. Second pillar of dark UI design is your text. Your headings and your titles should be pure white. Now, when you're doing dark UI design, you don't really want to use, or just UI design in general, you don't really want to use pure white on pure black or pure black on pure white, because the contrast becomes a little too harsh on the eyes. But when we say that, what we mean is in long forms of text, right? Even the notes that I have, the show notes that I have sitting in front of me, it's on a dark background with white text, but it's not pure black and it's not pure white, because if we read like that for like a long time, it starts to actually strain our eyes. Open up any sort of reading platform, open up your Kindle, open up your iPhone or Android books platform where you can read. There really shouldn't be, definitely not in iOS, but there is not a pure black, pure white scenario. There's off black with white and off white, and there is dark gray or deep grays, and there's sepia tones. It's too much, right? So we want to, but with our headings and our titles, we can actually make sure that those are using pure white on that black, because we can allow them to punch and give that contrast and hierarchy between headings, titles, and normal body copy. Now, the body copy should be a shade of gray. We still want to maintain contrast. We want this to be accessible. We're looking for a AA rating of accessibility, which we could talk about in a little bit, but we just want to be very, very careful how we use those. We want it to be bright enough where it's accessible, legible, readable, but not dull, so dull that we are struggling with accessibility. The third one there is UI elements. We're going to talk about your buttons, your tags, your chips, all of your elements that are inside of your design. We're going to have to make those colors a little less vibrant, and I'll prove it to you in a little bit, I promise. We're going to make those colors a little less vibrant, and we're also going to reduce the amount of colors that we use. So here's a couple of tips and tricks. You're going to desaturate your primary color by 20 to 30%. And then you can also try desaturating, brighten, desaturate, mixing these things together. And we're also going to add, if there's a drop shadow on your button, we don't use dark drop shadows in dark mode. We use probably the color of the element, really light, really opaque, so it just looks like it now becomes a colorful glow. So these are some of the differences. And then the last one that we're talking about is imagery. You will have to make some changes to imagery. Imagery out of the box looks great in light interfaces, but you might need to tweak the contrast and the saturation. All right, with that being said, let's jump over and let's take a look at an UI element. We'll do a little bit of work here talking about those four pillars. Oh my gosh, excuse me. We got to go back and talk about this concept of depth. I almost forgot. In your light mode, and this is a guiding principle here, okay? Huge guiding principle that becomes really, really potent when we move into dark mode, and it's this idea of depth. In light mode, a lot of times we are representing depth by having some sort of drop shadow. We're creating dimensionality, we're creating that depth. But we can't do that, like I just said previously, we can't do that in dark mode, because this drop shadow on a dark interface it's just going to blend in. It looks like mud, right? It looks very muddy and hazy. It's not a good look. So what we have to do is go very flat, and instead we use shades of darkness, right, to create a sense of depth. The darkest element is going to be your background. You can imagine this being the background of your interface. And then if we want to lift something off of that element, like a button, whatever it is, we're going to use a lighter shade. And what we're actually doing is we're creating what's called a z-index. Now, when we're looking at like geometry, we have the y-axis that runs up and down. We have the x-axis that runs left and right. And you actually have the z-axis that runs towards you in 3 dimensions. So when we're stacking elements, when you're thinking about your interface, like this interface that we're looking at, right? The very back is this white background. That's step 1, right? Then you have elements sitting on top of it, like text and images, okay? That becomes step 2. That's the second thing stacked now on top of it. If you have your background and a chip, well, now the text inside of it, that's actually step 3. So we have 3 steps. And if you were to turn this to the side, we're now in dark mode. We're going to express this depth, this dimensionality. We're going to express that through these varying degrees and tones of dark and light. And so you can imagine this one being your background, this one being your, maybe your card, this one being like a chip on top, and this being your typography. You're going to see this in play right now. If you have questions, please hit those in the chat. I'm always excited to answer your questions. Let's zoom out a little bit and talk about our card that we have here. We have this light mode card, right? And it has some text and image, some chips here. We got some pricing information and a primary call to action that has some sort of notification. And we have a secondary call to action up here. Now, quite often what I see young designers doing when they say, hey, we need you to turn this into dark mode, is they do something like this, which is our bad example of dark mode, is they basically just flop it to a some sort of dark background. They pull a dark background, right? And quite often this dark background that they pull is like just straight up black like this. They're like, hey, that's dark mode. We did it, okay? So this is bad. This is a no-no. Let's not do this at all. Here's the things that are wrong with this. We've flopped everything over to this dark mode card, and we have still probably the same colors of our call to actions. We're using bright white for all of our stuff. This is a huge disruption as we're reading. And if we just think about general design principles, hierarchy, legibility, I don't know where to look, right? In this card, I know that my primary call to action is my big blue button. But now all of these white chips, this secondary, this bright text is all deviating my eye as the user from my primary call to action. So what can we do to improve this? Well, let's take our light mode and our bad dark mode, and let's move this over and put it next to a little bit of a better dark mode, okay? And then we'll start actually building and breaking down what we did, right? So we picked a more neutralized background, and I really want to highlight on this because this is important. We're going to pick a background for our card that is, you can see, it is not a pure black, it's an off black, but also notice what's sitting on top of it. A little bit of our brand color brought down at a 10% opacity. So we are bringing that brand color into the background. We're making the whole thing feel very themed, right? When you do this, everything feels very, very like connected, like it's all intentional, it's well thought out, and really it's that idea of theming becomes very, very important. So remember our 4 pillars that we have been discussing. Background, right? Text. Whoa, I kind of hit that. Background, text, UI elements, and imagery. So all of these are going to require some sort of selections of colors. We need to talk about how we arrived at these selections of colors, and that's where our color scale comes into play, okay? So let's start out with a nice neutral color. You select whatever, off gray, deep gray, off black you want. Here's the tip I would say when starting with dark mode. Think about the fact that we need to have the ability to have something behind it or underneath it that's darker. So I don't want to be down here. I don't want to be way up here because that's starting too light. I like something in this area, right? Something that's starting about a 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. Why? Because it gives me the option to go even deeper if I needed to, okay? It gives me the option to go deeper if I needed to. So we're gonna pick, and here's, I'm being serious about this. Just pick a neutral color, pick a deep gray or an off black color and go with it, and we can tweak it and change it as we go. But then the next step is to, once you pick that, we're going to then run a color scale. And you could do this in Figma really easy. Just open up something like, color scale generator, something like that. Boom, right? Like we can grab a color. Let's just go up here and we'll choose that color and go 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3 and say, hey, give me 10 steps of this color. Boom. We're going to immediately create a neutral color scale. Okay. And that started with our 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. And okay, so we got something like that, whatever it is. Okay. And from there, you can take each of these and you can add whatever your brand color is. Let's find our brand color. Our brand color is this blue right here. So we can come into our very first one and we can add a brand color on top, pop it in like that. And that's very, very blue. It's a little too themed for me, a little too cringy, right? So I'm going to take that 10%. I'm going to copy that style. I'm going to put it on top of all of my other elements. Okay. So I'm going to go like this. Boom, pop it in. All of a sudden, look, we're theming, we're getting neutrals in our color scale that goes all the way down, okay? Now, if that's a little too much, we can go back and fix that, but this is the idea of giving you all of these neutralized colors that are themed, that are gonna be your scales of depth, okay? And we got Abijah in the chat saying, this is like Twitter's dark mode. Now I get why there's looks bluish, right? Yeah, because we're giving a little bit of that branding, and it's not just for branding purposes. It's to knit the whole thing together. It's to make the whole thing feel really connected and succinct, right? I think that word for me is like very important, that knitting together of that, like of that color, right? Now we've taken those colors, all the colors that we actually have here. Let me just actually shrink this down so we can get this a little bit closer to our text here. And I'm actually going to fill the background with pure black. Now you can kind of see, look, there's pure black. There is our actual background color that's being applied. Now we start to ask ourselves, and you don't need this many stops on your color scale if you don't want to. You probably need something like, 4 stops on your color scale, 5 stops on your color scale. If you want to, you can try to govern those and limit them a little bit. But we have a lot of room to play with, and none of these are actually a pure white, right? Okay, so you can notice this. My headline up here is actually pure white. Now, we've talked about our body copy. Let's move on to text. Let's move on to typography. My headlines are pure white. Why? Because those are the headlines and the titles that I want to pop. I really want them to stand out with hierarchy, okay? Now, next, after that, you'll notice, what color is this? Okay, it is pure white, but we're bringing the opacity of it down. What colors are these? It's definitely not pure white. It's this D4 DDE7 color, which is like down here on my color scale. Do you notice? Boom. This is what it is. And now here's the tough thing. I've added all these layers, right, of color, and I've actually added some white so we can get it closer to like more of a pure white here. And that's just how I chose to do my color scale there. But like if you want to get the actual color, you're going to have to draw a rectangle here and just sample the color. There it is, like DEE7E2. There is my color. I'd probably want to turn all of these into local styles or using the new Figma variables, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But notice how I've applied that to all of the elements in my card, right? Like this is a more subtle version of text. It's still very legible. If I was to run something like the Stark accessibility tools on this and try to get legibility, like to see if it has good contrast, let's do typography here. Okay, yeah, oh, sorry, contrast. I'm gonna grab the whole thing and see if I'm getting a good contrast. Okay, so my large text is getting that. I probably need to make this a little bit brighter is what Stark is telling me, okay? So again, lots of room to play with it. I just wanna make it a little bit more accessible, okay? And now, somebody says, does anyone now know how I do convert that mix of 3 colors into one? I think I just showed you, right? So we grab those 3 colors that are being showcased over here. Just draw a rectangle over here on the side, hit I for your eye picker, sample it, boom. That is your color. You can see it right there. Okay, that's a great question. Hopefully I'm phrasing it in a way that works for you. Okay, so that is your text, and we're just gonna like check for accessibility and contrast. But then after that, we're gonna go to our third step, which is assessing the UI elements. Okay, so our UI elements, okay, those colors need to become less vibrant. Notice this in my white card. I'm using this bright blue color, this 0075FF, and I'm trying to use it again over here. But the problem is that contrast is, if we really just like drill in on these, that contrast is very bright. It's very bold. It's way too much. What is actually a little bit better is to neutralize that color and make it just a little bit more palatable, okay? So what we can do is, honestly, you can just take your color here and we're going to pull it back on our color picker just a little bit. You want to find something in, almost imagine like an arc happening over on this side. You want to just pull it back and find more of a neutralized version. Now, again, this is something that you're going to play with, and you're going to have a variable or local style for your light brand color or light primary color, and then you're going to have the dark version or dark UI of your primary or brand color. You're going to have those two variables. They're going to be a team working well with light and dark. That's what they're going to do, okay? And so let's jump back in and take a look at our UI elements. And here's an example of those, right? Here's that UI element, like that initial one, that light mode, and here's the like desaturated, neutralized version. It just looks better, okay? Now, we can also, instead of doing drop shadow, we can add just a hint of a drop shadow, and that drop shadow is not a dark drop shadow. It's a little bit of a glow, right? That you'll notice, just very subtle, this glow. We could crank this up so you can kind of see it. That's a little too much glow that's happening behind my head. We could bring it down something like 20%. You can raise it up to 30%. So again, this is just another thing. We're integrating that brand color and just glowing it. That's going to give it it's less about dimensionality for the button and more about this glowing kind of hovering elevation thing that's happening, okay? So keep that in mind. Those are your UI elements. We want to neutralize them. We want to choose less colors. The same thing is actually happening up here. Notice this. Our secondary call to action, it's secondary, right? So we need to kind of neutralize it a little bit, okay? So, you know, yes, is this available? It sure is, but it's not going to detract from our primary call to action. So we've done that with our elements, and I don't know if you can tell this on screen, but our fourth pillar is to establish some imagery changes here. So you can see my image. If I go to the settings, nothing has been changed here on the image, but in my dark mode image, I've just gone in, I've just made a couple little tweaks. I've increased contrast, saturation, you know, highlights, played with the shadows a little bit, but we just want our image to pop just like a little bit more, okay? Now, that is really like an art form to learn how to tweak imagery to like make sure that it has the right level of contrast. It's not overwhelming, but it doesn't look dead. And that's the problem. Images can look dead when they go into a dark interface. So we just want to increase that interest in them a little bit, okay? Let's take a look at some examples of a full UI or a couple of different interfaces that have been built out. But before we do that, why don't we stop, answer some questions, and we'll come on back. All right, let's see if we got any questions in the chat. We had that question or that comment from Abijah talking about Twitter's dark mode. This idea of like blending together the brand color and creating this neutral branded color palette, super duper important. And let me see, Aditha says, how do we show disabled CTAs here? That's fantastic. So I mean, honestly, you're gonna do the same thing that you would do when you normally create all the different states for a button. You got like default, hover, you know, disabled, pressed, active, you know, key down, whatever it is. This is where the design decisions come in, right? And I would actually flip all of those buttons that you have, and we're going to need to create dark mode versions of them, especially if you're working in like components, variants of those components. You're going to want to figure this out and implement it. So I would say first thing is play a little bit. The second thing I might say is if you're going to do like some sort of inactive state, you probably want to flip it off of your primary color and you want to have a deeper shade of that primary color neutralizing the button. I mean, we could try it real quick and let's just jump into it and see what it looks like, right? So if I was going to say somehow this was, you know, neutralized, I'm not going to, and I'm just going to put a color on top of it, hide this. I'm going to pick my, let's see, my brand color, something like this. And let's make sure it's all the way up at 100% like the other one is. But I'm going to neutralize it a little bit more. I'm going to bring it down maybe like somewhere in here and just neutralize. But I think the biggest thing would be I'm going to bring down the text inside. Okay, so all of a sudden we get like a very neutralized version of the button. Again, we'd want to play with that a little bit more, but there's lots of things you can do. Like you can outline them, you can, you know, just bring the opacity down to the whole thing. We just want to be very clear like what is disabled and what is enabled. Denny $1 says, we know that for usability's sake we can't pick a pure black for the background, but I started noticing more and more companies using it. Well, mainly for apps. Any thoughts? Yeah, I think it's very, very bad. Now, again, there might be a use case if you're an application that doesn't require lots of heavy reading. Okay, I can see you validating it, right? Like if you use pure black and pure white in your application, there's going to be no, you know, giant design punishment that comes down from the sky to nail you. Okay, you can use it if you want to, but just know it's a faux pas when it comes to long amounts of reading or large amounts of content. If you have a lot of visual content, okay, we might be able to validate it. You might even be able to validate it if you just have lots of charts, graphs, and kind of that type of information, because you're probably not going to be staring that for a really long period of time. But even that, I would tell you, yeah, you probably just are going to do better off taking a more holistic, elegant approach and not using pure black and pure white. That's a great question though. Sarah Abdullah says, can you please show us how to use auto layout? I've made entire videos about that. You should definitely go check it out. Or if you are interested, consider joining my new 30-day UI design program. It's launching in a couple of weeks. You're gonna spend time with me every single day in this program, and you're going to be learning the basics and the necessities of UI design to be like really an impressive UI designer within 1 month. And then you will start actually applying. You'll have portfolio pieces, case studies, you'll have everything you need and all the skills that you need and the foundations laid to start applying. So definitely consider that. Okay, let's jump back into it. And before we do, I think we should actually, I think it's time. Do you think it's time? I think it's time to play Wordle. It's Friday, y'all. Let's just unwind a little bit and let's play a little bit of Wordle, okay? All right, if you don't know what Wordle is, we're looking for a 5-letter word here, and we are trying to guess it with only this many guesses. We would like to get it by the 4th guess because we just have higher expectations for ourselves around here, okay? So let's try. You guys are totally free to help me. I like to start out with something like, oh, somebody said Wordle. That's right, Shamik. I love a good game of Wordle. Let's start out with a word like PR, maybe prize, I'm feeling today. How you start is very, very important, and I want to make sure that we start. Somebody said start with audio. I do like to start with audio as well because there's a lot of vowels in the word audio. Let's try audio. You know what? Let's do it. I like it. Okay, let's do Tiago's request here, audio. Now, if you don't know how to play, what this is telling us is there is a U in the word, there is an O in the word, but they're in the wrong spot. What it's also telling us is that the A and the D and the I are not in the word, right? So we got 2 that are in the word, but they're in the wrong spot. We're looking for green. We're looking for that U and that O to be in a green spot here. So, okay, so no A, D, or I. Let's talk about, what has an O and a U in it, but doesn't have these 3 letters? Let's talk about duos. How about duo? And is duo? No, not duos. We can't have a D in it, right? Okay. Come on, we can do this together. I need your recommendations. I need your help. Somebody said mouth. Zaid said mouth. Ooh, are we? Yes, I like it. Zaid, tell me that we got it right now. If we got it right now, Zaid, and that was your clue, I'm going to give you 1 free month into the Design Champs community because let's try it. Oh, it's so close. Okay, so now we know those letters are not in it. And also still the O and the U in the wrong spot. So close, so close. So that means the O and the U have to be, okay, the O's not here, the O's not here. That means, or the U's. The U is neither one of these columns, right? So it could be something like something O, and then the U could be here. What's that? What's an O here and a U here? Somebody said focus. Ooh, Focus, F. Ooh, O. That's no good because that doesn't go there, right? The O doesn't go there. Somebody said the O doesn't go in the second spot though, right? What goes in the second spot? It can't be Lotus because the O can't go there. Come on, we're gonna work this out together. See, somebody said it's cloud. CLOUD. That could be it. _W. Do we have it? Do we have it? Do we have it? No, but we got the U in the right spot. We're making progress. Come on, y'all. This is it. This is the time. We're gonna do it. Okay. Let's try, cloud. Somebody said flower, but the L is not in there. Now we don't have an L. So look down here. These are all the letters, the dark gray letters. Those are the letters that are not in the word. Let's focus up. We are a team. I believe in you and you believe in me, okay? So there could be an F. Okay, so let's do like something. Something. I'm just going to put S for something. Something. And I think the O might have to be at the beginning. Is the O at the beginning? Oh, somebody said occur. See, like occur like that. There could be two C's and they are tricky about that. Somebody also said quick. Quick could be a good one. QUI. There's no O in the word quick though. There's a Q. I like occur. I like Abijah's guess. Let's go with occur. Oh, it's occur. Let's go. Woo! That's amazing. Abijah, that was your guess. I am going to give you, if you just reach out to me, just DM me, Abijah, on Instagram, and I'm going to give you 1 free month in the Design Champs community because that was the guess. You did it. It was the word occur. Get out of town. What a great guess. Thanks for playing Wordle with me on this amazing Friday. We're going to jump back into some dark UI design, but I want Abijah to DM me on Instagram. Find me on Instagram, DM me. Let's make it happen. Let's get you in the community, okay? It's going to be really, really exciting. Oh my gosh, it's going to be really good. I'm feeling frisky. I'm going to give you like 2 months free. I want you in there, okay? I want to be able to hang out with you and you be part of these live events. And if the rest of you want to join and become a design champ, it's only $15 a month. It's like the cost of 2 cups of coffee. Jump in, live events. We do have some really cool live events coming up. I want to show you some of these. I'm going to jump into Design Champs really quickly and show you some of these live events coming up in a couple days here. Starting in a week, we're going to be reviewing the book Freelance and Business and Stuff by Jen and Amy Hood. So we're going to be talking about freelance business. And then in November, I'm going to be talking about sales. It's the most important skill that designers don't tend to have. And then we have another design critique coming up in November. So we got live events. You got access to premium videos and content, resources, templates, Notion files, all of my client documents, all that kind of good stuff. And you get also access to members posts, and you can get feedback through show and tell on all of your work, and even ask tons of questions and get answers from the community. So, consider becoming the links. Oh, so Zaid says, can you share the link to those events? All the events are really found at one link. You just go to designchamps.io. The link is down in the description of this live stream. Sign up, become a design champ. You get access to all of it. It's just one monthly fee to have, chat with me, chat with others, design critiques, live events, all that kind of stuff. Sign up for Design Champs. Will be super dope. Okay, let's get back and talk about some dark UI design because we're almost done. I'm going to zoom in on a couple of really great designs here that are, I think, doing a really good job of showcasing dark and light design. Again, let's use those 4 pillars, right? And assess this design on those 4 pillars: background, text, UI elements, and imagery. Okay. Background, text, UI elements, and imagery. The background here, okay? What are we using for the background? We're not using pure black. We are using, it's pretty close, but it's an off black. It's neutralized. I'm okay with it, right? Because it's not a lot to read here, and they're putting the text on these lighter highlighted cards, right? Okay, so these cards right here are this 1717. So see how we're moving up in elevation, okay? Then you have things like, for instance, text, right? Like our subtitles here, or the labels of the information, is this lighter color, right? And it's actually, it's a pretty bright color, but the opacity of it has been brought down, which is a pretty good trick also. And then you have the text is actually not even pure white. Like these texts here are not pure white. They are FA. So they're an off-white color. Okay, let's zoom out and take a look again. We could say, just look at our color really quickly here. I'm going to do R, and just draw a rectangle out. Let's just see, right? What do we got here? We got a color for our call to actions, right? Or all our primary color. It's being used in our little edit pencils, in our tags, in our large pay now button. Okay, let's see if it's using the same color over here. It is using, I don't think it's using the same color. It is using the same color. So for me, that's a no-no. For me, I would want to actually, now here's why it might not be a no-no. This designer, because this is not my design, but this designer chose not to use like for our light version over here, chose not to use a really bold color like this. If it's a really bold color, it's not going to look well over here. So she actually did a really phenomenal job at finding a color that works well for both light and dark, and using that as that limited primary call to action color. So in this, I say, congrats, well done. You're kind of cheating the system. You're getting best of both worlds. But I would say though, the reason a lot of applications use bold colors for their call to actions is because they tend to pop a little bit more. Do you see that? The difference there it may feel negligible to you, but it's actually quite powerful. So I would say that he's making that compromise for the dark and light mode potentially, but I think he might be missing out on some of the punch and the potency of the color, especially for these small elements down here. So that's okay. We're changing UI element color. Same thing here for our text. He's using kind of like this orange color. It's this D85 color. And is he using the same color over here? He is, okay? So again, I would say the same thing. Whatever this color is could probably help just to be a little bit punchier, a little bit bolder like that, and our buttons could be, pretty nice if they were that color as well. Let's just change these really quickly and get the impact of it all. Boom, we'll change these to be a little bit darker. Again, over here we're using this color. Over here, we're using this color, okay? Same thing. See how this punches a little bit more now, and this is desaturated? I like that a little bit better, okay? Yeah, and he's saying the red is giving, Denny $1 in the chat is saying that the red is giving the grand total like some sort of like an error vibe. I could totally see that. So we might change the hue maybe to be more of like a green. And if you're going to do green for your grand total, and actually what we might want to do is let's pick our blue, that depth of color there, and let's move it back to be a little bit more of a green. Okay, and we could find a green right there, and we might even want to play with it and darken it a little bit. That feels pretty good, but then we're going to have to rearrange our green color up here that's being used for new. Okay, so anyways, we could do some color explorations there for sure, but I think that overall it's doing a pretty good job. There's no imagery here, but they are doing a pretty decent job of switching up the background text, creating that elevation. They didn't from what I can tell, they're not adding any sort of blur or radiating color effect off the button. That might help. They might be going for a little bit of a cleaner look. Let's look at another example. Now, notice this, that like in our previous example, all of our color styles are set up in those color scales. Kudos to them for doing this. Alabaster, you have all of your neutrals, and Wild Sand, it looks really, really similar to your Alabaster, but we're gonna accept it and let it go. So, we're doing okay here. But here's what I would say is, I think a better way to do this is using the new variables like ability inside of Figma. And if you haven't played with variables, they can be very, very powerful. I know they're still in beta, and there's some discussion on whether or not they're going to be, part of a free plan or paid plan. They're probably going to be part of the paid plan. But notice this, that no longer, like, yes, do I have color styles here? Sure, I have color styles here, and that's really great. But I also have them loaded up as variables in this example, right? And what we've done is we've set all variables, and I could have renamed this as color variables or whatever, but we have all sorts of different like elements. Like you have your primitives and you have your tokens. There's lots of, this is not a variables lesson by any way, shape, or form. There's lots of different ways to set up your variables, but I will say this. Notice how we have colors for heading, and then we have the actual heading color over here, okay? And we have, like, for instance, like our body divider or our form input field, everything is gonna have a light mode and a dark mode version of the color. And we can set up our primitives. You can see, as soon as we actually choose a fill color for like a frame or a section inside of Figma, it allows us to dictate the primitive. Hey, is this going to be considered the light mode or the dark mode, right? We can set up primitives for other things, like what language is it going to be in, what size is it going to be. That's the idea of overarching primitives inside of, you know, logic or variables. So we could set that up. If I'm losing you right now, stay tuned. Don't get too lost, because check it out. We have, all you need to know is we have light and dark mode variables. For every color you would use for something, right? When we click inside of a form field, it's using a variable. And that way, when we're saying, hey, that variable is to be used inside of anything that is light mode, but as soon as we drag it over into dark mode, bang, it immediately becomes dark mode. And if you're like,